Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I'm back from holiday, and while I was on holiday, Gaijin decided to drop another Moments of Valor. I did see in a data mine that they added a bunch of camos to the French stuff, and yeah, it turns out on Monday they decided it was time to make a cool video. Now, it is pretty awesome actually, mainly because the Moments of Valor right now have kind of focused on nations that aren't always particularly in the game. So stuff like Canada, right, where you have a few of their vehicles in the game, but you don't have them as like an independent nation. Same with like Argentina, and then also some of the other nations that they've done. And it's really cool to see that they're covering France as well. France itself is one of my favorite nations when it comes to the game and also just real life. I really enjoy the culture. Used to enjoy staying there, especially in the summers. Ended up in a place called Châtelain, which is in Brittany. It's just a beautiful little quaint town. And also at the same time, just going to places like Brest, going to places like Caen, and also Saint Malo. I had some fantastic times growing up. Going around France, and of course, doing the Normandy beaches and going to Saint Mary-Église and many other places, which was just wonderful. Now, to celebrate one of France's kind of largest celebrations that they do a year, which is, of course, Bastille Day, Gaijin has made a Moments of Valor. And also, alongside this Moments of Valor, there's a bunch of other things too, just to let you know. So, there's a bunch of bundles that are available in the Gaijin store. You have the ground vehicles bundle, the air bundle. If you want my recommendations, I think the ground bundle is definitely worth it. All three of these vehicles are very fun in their own way. The air bundle, I mean, it's okay, but it's quite pricey for what you get out of it. Technically, the F1C is the best grinder for the French air tree, but it's also limited because of its reliance on the Magic 2s. Also, you have the Vautour coming back. Don't bother, it's terrible. And then also you have the Milan, which is a bomb truck. So if you want to get it, I suppose you can, but it's just a bomb truck. It is discounted, which is quite nice. If you want to purchase any of these, you can use my partner code. The partner code is, or I'll leave basically links in a pinned comment and also the description if you want to pick any of this stuff up. With the partner code, you'll support the channel. You'll get the decal, which, by the way, we're going to be changing pretty soon. So if you haven't got it yet, it might be worth picking it up. And then also, there is a decal available, which you can pick up too. So if you want me to do a specific video like talking about all of these, I can. Also, a lot of these get some unique camouflages now. So you can see here, this is the one for the Mirage F1C. If you already have the vehicles, you can purchase these camos for 200 GE in the actual game itself. So you don't need to buy the bags in order to get them. And all of the camouflages look very nice, basically historical camouflages, and they are always the coolest, at least to me, for me to see. I've never really enjoyed the fact that when it comes to like a lot of like the esports skins and the Twitch shop skins, they're very like brightly colored and obviously very designed for like a younger audience. For me, I'll always be a fan of the kind of like historical stuff that they do. Now, to celebrate Bastille Day, by the way, if you don't know what Bastille Day is, it's basically about the storming of the Bastille. The Bastille was, I suppose you'd class it as like a military prison or like just a prison in general. And they stormed it, they released everybody, and it was a huge part of kind of like the French Revolution in the 1700s, where the French said, no, we will take back our power from the elite. And it's celebrated every year in France with a bunch of parades, basically everywhere. They do a large one in Paris. I even remember, as I said before, in Châtelain, where what they used to do is everybody would go on parade. You'd have the gendarmerie, you would have like generally just the people, all the government officials, the military. Was fantastic. Basically, the whole town came out in order to do it. So let's have a look at the video. Now, remember, when it comes to these things, Gaijin does like to put some fun things in here, and that's something you always have to take into account. But most of it is obviously already in game, such as this vehicle and this. These are the rank 1 vehicles. You have the good old the Dewotines, which I like to call them, but that's not how you actually say them, or the Dewatneys. But but it's nice to see the D series in the Saint-Chamond from the First World War. Kind of cool that we have these like First World War stuff now, so they can kind of like show them in videos, and hopefully at some point, they can bring them back in a big way. A lot of people seem to enjoy the World War One events. I know the vehicles themselves are kind of useless, but it's pretty cool that they ended up doing it. So let's talk about this vehicle because this one hasn't actually made it in game yet. This is the SPAD S13, and it was available to play during the Great War event, which was the April Fool's event of this year. But it also, you weren't able to unlock it. And I think the reason is they're probably going to do some weird bundle deal with Aces of Thunder. You remember Aces of Thunder? It's the VR game that Gaijin are developing. It was supposed to just be for PlayStation. Now it's coming to Steam. It was supposed to come out at Christmas, and then it obviously got delayed. They've released a few like blog posts about it and like what they're going to do with it. They've given a bunch of like VR YouTubers some codes to play it, but it basically just looks like War Thunder with the ability to, use VR to move your controls in the cockpit. And I feel like when it comes to it, like the game's going to come out and then they're just going to add that functionality to War Thunder. So what is kind of the point? The other part is one of the big selling points of that game is you'll also have access to some World War One vehicles, one of them being the SPAD S13. So my feeling is they're probably going to do this weird bundle deal like they kind of did with Enlisted, if you remember, when they launched it, where maybe you'll be able to buy a pack in War Thunder or buy like a copy of Aces of Thunder, and it will give you like a free code you can put in War Thunder, and you can get access to like the SPAD 13 here, and maybe some of the other aircraft that they brought in on that event, because there was a few others too, like for example the Fokker D7, which I feel like is probably one that people want more than the SPAD. I might be wrong, it obviously depends on what you're inclined with, but it's interesting to see that this vehicle is in the video, but you can't get it in War Thunder. And once again, there's the Fokker. You also have like the Tri-Wing aircraft, which will probably be in there too. So this video obviously goes into France's contribution to the Second World War. I do feel like I do feel like France gets really badly aligned or misaligned when it comes to the Second World War. People have to realize how much of a hit France took in the First World War. From basically 1914 to 1918, they lost an insane amount of their population. They basically lost a whole generation of men, and also, a lot of people around that area too. And this massively annihilated the economy of France, and it also just massively annihilated it as kind of a large power. The same thing happened with Britain. Obviously, Russia had its issues too, and of course, Germany, also had their issues, especially with the Treaty of Versailles and having to try and get back on their feet, and then running into fascist power. So, at the start of the Second World War, France was ahead in some areas. Their tanks were actually really cool. Their technology was really cool. But at the same time, they had problems with production. They weren't able to actually produce as much as they wanted. There was also a lot of strikes during the 1930s, not just in tank production, in plane production, and every other production, because to be honest, they weren't paying their workers very well. So what ended up happening is the efficiency of the production line kind of fell apart. And also, they had a bunch of problems with certain technologies, such as radio equipment. There's this famous story about when they set up the Maginot Line, which was supposed to be this incredibly impressive defensive area, in order to kind of get commands to different areas to be able to move troops along the line or move up. There was just one guy sat down in Paris with a telephone, and everybody would phone him, and then he would phone everybody else. Now, whether that's true or not, obviously that would be a bit ridiculous, but back then when radios weren't common practice for a lot of nations, it could have easily been that. And then also at the same time, you had the Maginot Line breaking, and you had, the full-on invasion of France. And I feel like the way that France is depicted in most media is it just fell and it flopped, and the Vichy government was installed, and France just died. Obviously, you have like the French resistance that, turns up in a lot of media. Stuff like Sniper Elite, for example, just recently did a game based around the Resistance. Well, kind of. If you've actually played it, it's not really. Even though like it's named after the Resistance stuff, there isn't actually a lot of Resistance things. It feel kind of just like random missions tagged together. But there is also other games which focus on the Resistance efforts, which is really cool. Then you have stuff like Allo, for example, which is just a fantastic show to watch. If you've ever seen it, a comedic show which basically makes fun of everything to do with it, especially like the German occupation and many of the kind of little quirks of the different, interactions between the different nations. But one of the areas that I feel like doesn't get a lot of credit in literature and also just in general is the Free French. The Free French were a set of people who ended up fighting for France all through the war. They fought in North Africa, in the technical colonies. They fought on the Eastern Front when it came to Russia. And also, they fought in taking back their homeland of France. And in War Thunder, we have a little bit of kind of coverage of this, the Normandy Niemen setup. You have the Act 3, which you see here, push forward. You also have stuff like, for example, the Panther, the Dauphiné, which the Dauphiné is one that was captured during the Second World War that was then used by the Free French. And then after the fall of Germany and France becoming France once again, they actually used Tigers and Panthers in their forces, just like they were trying to use a lot of the old equipment that was kind of left in France to continue building their military just in case anything else happened. So stuff like the Naval, for example, if you have a look at its internal components, a lot of them are German because the Germans left a bunch of stuff in France, so they wanted to use them. And I find that kind of interesting and, pretty cool. They also had, of course, a lot of ships, which is really cool. Unfortunately, a lot of them were lost in Mazel Kabir, but it's that's a touchy one. Like I get that. Basically, what happened is the British forces didn't want the German forces to capture the French ships because they were worried of the naval power situation. In the First World War, if you have a look at Britain really did control a lot of the seas. They were an incredible, powerful naval power. I know people talk about stuff like Gallipoli, for example, and how much of a disaster that was, or them running into a bunch of mines while trying to move around the Ottoman setup. But a lot of the British Navy was incredibly powerful. And one of the things that was very important during that time was the shipping routes, the trade routes, just like the Second World War, but in the First World War, it was also incredibly important. We saw more of the evolution of submarines then. A lot of people don't talk about them, that they're more kind of focused on the Second World War stuff because that was like the German focus. But the Kriegsmarine in the Second World War, you already had some pretty beefy ships, the pocket battleships that we've seen in the game, and also things like the Bismarck, the Tirpitz, many of these other things that people talk about. But France had also built some pretty crazy machines, the Richelieu, the Strasbourg, these massive machines that were designed to actually fight the Italian naval forces, which once again were modernizing, were getting better during the 30s and the 20s. But a lot of them were then moored because obviously France themselves kind of surrendered to the Germans, and the British were very worried about the Germans getting access to them because one of the massive advantages the British had was the Royal Navy compared to the Kriegsmarine, and therefore they tried to destroy a lot of the French ships while they were docked, which kind of makes me sad, but also it's one of those things where it's one of those necessities because you can't let the enemy get access to these resources. It's a very interesting area to kind of learn about, and I would highly recommend it just because it's one of those it's one of those kind of what ifs. It's kind of like Dresden, right? Or it's kind of like the nuclear bomb. Was it the correct thing to do at the time? Was it not the correct thing to do at the time? Because technically you are in effect destroying allied vessels, but how long would they stay allied, right? It's kind of cool that they did actually feature Navy quite a lot in this video. One of the problems that I think Gaijin has had over the time, well, maybe not a problem, but it's one of the things that I've just kind of noticed. They don't really feature a lot of naval stuff, even with like the last update, right? The last update was massively major naval focused. You had the Iowa, you had the Bismarck, the Yamato, all of these things, but they don't get a lot of screen time compared to everything else. And the reason is because of the percentage of people who play naval compared to all of the other modes. And it would be nice if more people played. Hopefully, with this update, more people will play. So therefore, we can enjoy more footage of it, because it's always nice when Gadget makes it, and it usually looks really cool. Then you have, of course, the AUF-1, which shows more of a post-Second World War stuff. The SS-11, which I think, once again, France does not get enough credit when it comes to developing missile technology. The SS-10, the SS-11, the SS-12, the fact that they even had transport aircraft, which they would attach these missiles to, or even the Corsair, for example. The F4U-7, I believe, or one of the Corsairs, was used as a test platform for the SS missile, which is really interesting. And you, of course, have the ELC series with their missiles, the SS-11s and 12s that they used, and it's just really cool. And luckily in War Thunder, it is represented quite well. Hopefully in the future, it can get represented even more. But yeah, it's a cool part of their history. You also have the Étendard. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like they've just nicked this from the other video they did on Argentina. Do you remember that? Like they may have changed some insignias and stuff like that, but you have like a massive anti-ship missile. Anti-ship missiles are coming into the game. That's one of the growth areas that has. You have anti-radiation missiles, and you have anti-ship missiles. We've already seen this with the Marineflieger Tornado, and then also the ASM-1 and 2 that's coming for the F-2. So maybe stuff like the Super Étendard may end up getting these massive missiles, which are designed to annihilate ships. I think it would be really cool, especially since recently in Aerialistic, they made it so a lot of maps have access to stuff such as carriers and also destroyers that you can hit. By the way, this is a beautiful shot, like just with the guided bomb coming in and just blowing up the Soviet vehicle. I think that's really awesome. And then, of course, you have the Rafale, you have the you had the Mirage earlier, and then, of course, the Leclerc. You know what's interesting? I don't know. Maybe you are. So, War Thunder Live has some funny rules, okay? And War Thunder Live is basically where all the camos get posted. You'll know it because when you go onto it and you type in something, you'll find about 1 million anime camos and then one historical camo. But basically, when it came to camos on War Thunder Live, for the longest time, and maybe even now, you're not allowed to make like ambulance camos or Red Cross camos. So there's the M113, right, that we have in game. The M113 was used as kind of like an ambulance in certain situations. So some people decided to make an ambulance version of it, but it got removed from War Thunder Live because you're not allowed under, I don't know, it's under like the Geneva Convention or under something like that, where you're not allowed these in real life. As if War Thunder is real life, and as if like the anime skins like don't exist. Like it's so silly that we end up then. But I think if I remember, the UN stuff used to also fall in that area, but I'm guessing it doesn't anymore since it's literally an official video here. So yeah, we don't have to worry about that. Enjoy the UN stuff. Ah, yes, the fun helicopters, the Gazelles, and then of course the Mirages, which always look fantastic. France really does a great job at making some beautiful, beautiful aircraft. You also have some drones here. I don't know if these like are attacker drones. You may remember, was it like a year ago, these drones got leaked, that they were like bringing in more of them. Seems like a lot of the stuff that gets leaked from that one leaker turns up in videos. Wonder if that there's a reason for that. But basically, these drones look like kind of attacker drones, and they're getting shot down by missiles from Rafales. So maybe that'll be something you'll do in the future. As a person who has tried my best to shoot down scout drones and stuff with pretty much anything that isn't a very heavy proximity missile. And I'm sure many of you guys have run into this issue too. I'd be amazed if you'd ever be able to shoot them down with something like a Rafale. But yeah, I also hope they just never add more attack drones in the game because that stuff is so annoying. Once again, War Thunder's fundamental problem, especially at top tier, is getting killed by stuff you do not see and also cannot do anything about. You know, it's a rock paper scissors scenario, but the rock paper scissors has added like 50 more variables, so there's no way you can track them all, and it's very annoying. So you have the anti-ship missile, annihilates. You got the HMD, and you have a big airliner. So I'm not good with airliners. I recently went to the BC Aviation Museum, which is fantastic, by the way. I highly recommend it. Really cheap to go to. They also right now are restoring a Lancaster, which is just fantastic. And it's one of the Canadian Lancasters, and they're going to do it in the kind of the silver kind of lining that you see when it comes to one of the Lancasters in game, because Canada used Lancasters after the war. Well, let's start from the beginning. Canada built a lot of Lancasters for the war effort. It was one of the main producers of the Lancasters. So after the war, Canada got a bunch of Lancasters back, and they actually used them for many different things. You have like some like marine patrol stuff, but mainly what they used them for was kind of geographical mapping. So they attached a bunch of cameras to them, basically near the tail section and other areas, to map a lot of the northeastern area of Canada, because basically it's very hard to go to. So I think that's really cool. And yeah, they're actually restoring one of them at the BC Aviation Museum. There's a bunch of Lancasters in Canada still, which is really cool. There's also a Halifax over here. I need to go see that at some point. So yeah, you got the Mirages. I think you've got the, is this the Rafale? Pretty sure it is. And then you have an airliner. So I asked Rocker about this. Rocker's the guy who does a lot of the museum streams. He's a good friend. You know, he works at the National Aviation Museum in America, the one that is in the East. I can't remember the state, but basically it's really cool, right? He's also a massive like plane dude, so he's just really into that stuff. And I asked him like, "What is this thing?" Because I've never seen it before, right? And he basically said he doesn't think it's real. Like, I think it's just a model that they've made up. And you know, they do this now with these types of things. They always add in these like little things at the end to kind of get you talking and thinking about stuff. But if anybody knows what this thing is, I would really like to know what is about. This thing though, I mean, this is very recognizable, right? Like, this is the A400, the A400M Atlas, the Airbus vehicle, and basically this is used by a lot of European militaries. So it's used by Germany, used by France, used by Spain, you know, and even used by Britain itself. So this one is, you know, standard transport aircraft. You can see the massive type of propellers on it, and maybe this turns up in the game. You know, it would actually be kind of cool if it did turn up. But one thing, once again, we have to mention about this is if you look at it, you might realize that it's a bit low poly compared to everything else. So you can see here it has some pretty hard edges on it compared to like a lot of the other models that you will have seen in this video. And the reason for this is usually Gaijin just buys these models and just sticks them in the videos. So they're not actual, let's call them like Gaijin War Thunder models. So they're a little bit low poly and not as good as previous. So, you know, it would be cool to see this thing. I don't really know how they would add it in apart from as like an AI target somewhere. So maybe they could bring it in there. But yeah, it's one of those that I don't really know how they would do it. It's beautiful to see though, and hopefully maybe in the future we could see these things. I don't know whether it's like refueling stuff or transporting stuff, or you know, even just like general radar stuff. Who knows? Like it could be cool to see it. And then of course you have one of the most beautiful skins I think I've ever seen on a French aircraft, which is, you know, you have the Alpha Jets here. which are part of the display team. The Alpha Jet's actually very good in War Thunder. I don't think it's underappreciated because it's, a lot of people really like it, but it's really good in ground, surprisingly, because it has a really low heat signature, which means locking onto it with missiles is pretty hard to do. And it has some quite nice ordnance with also some additional stuff like CCIP, which makes it very easy. But you can kind of see the skin here. You can see all the planes on the tail and all the colors. I really think it looks pretty awesome. But that's basically the Moments of Valor. So there's a few interesting vehicles here that maybe we'll see in the future. Probably won't, though, because they're just models. And I just think it's fantastic. I hope they continue to make these videos. I think they're really awesome to see. And at the same time, I'm glad to be back. We'll be back streaming today, playing some War Thunder, playing some Ground of Aces. And as always, thank you for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. Hope you have a wonderful week. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.